Welcome everybody. My name is Miles. I'm going to go through all the basic steps for soldering today. I'm going to make your job easier. If you struggled in the past, this should help you. I'm going to go through the different types of solder I use, tips, a little bit about the gun, temperature, just the stuff that you need to know to make soldering easier. I've been doing this for 40 years, so I made all those mistakes and I'll share some of those with you. So I'm going to start off with the solder. I like the 60-40 solder, 60% tin, 40% lead. That combination together has a lower melting point. Plus, the solder sets up within a second, so you don't have to sit there and hold it forever. If you use something like 50-50 with more tin, you got to hold it for 3 or 4 seconds. You can't move it. If you move it, the joint is terrible. You'll actually see a crack between the two, and it'll be really dull. It won't be nice and shiny like it's supposed to be. This solder here sets up within a second. So I'm going to turn on my gun. And while that's doing that, I'm going to show you what you need for a third hand. I take my solder, if I can find the end here. There it is. And I'll wrap it a few times around my hand. Depends how thick the solder is. And this solder here is 1 mil. I like solder anywhere that's 32nd of an inch to 16th. That's my preferred solder. The thicker the solder, the more flux is in the middle, so it applies more flux to whatever you're soldering. And I use this for cleaning my gun too, but anywhere around that size is what I prefer. Once I wrap it a few times around my hand, I wrap it around here, and I got several of these of all the different sizes. That way when you set this down, there's your third hand. So when I solder something, and I just wipe my tip off, every time you solder, especially before you put your gun away, you got to wipe the tip off. If it's bad, you see some black on there, you'll have to use a scratchy pad. But I got water on the sponge here that I use, and I'll apply solder to it so it's nice and fresh and clean. The tip has to look nice and shiny. If it's not nice and shiny, it is really difficult to get a nice and shiny joint. So one complements the other. So what I do is I tint one side. This is stranded, so I want to make sure I twist it. It's stranded. Nice and shiny, not too big of a blob. This is thicker wire right here. So it takes a little bit more to get it a little bit warmer, but you can see how it's nice and shiny all the way around. And then you'll need something like either a vise, hemo, what works good too. Wrap a rubber band around the pliers, and this almost actually works the best. And now that I tinted both sides, I can put them together. You got a second. That's all you get. That's all you need, I should say. And you'll see it's nice and shiny, all sides, just like my tip. And you notice I just put my tip away without cleaning it. Always put your tip away when it's nice and clean. And you get areas where on boards and wires that are not, this is copper, that it's not copper, so that can be difficult to solder. Even a wire that's older, if that's the case, sometimes you need more flux, and they make it different forms that you can just add to the wire. Sometimes I have to do that. If my tip gets dirty, where I can't get some of the black off because I got to use higher temperatures, right now it's at 570, I also have this tinner. It's called a tip tinner, and that helps clean your tip. everything evolves around having a clean tip. Even though it's clean, I'll put solder in it before I put it back in the tray. And that's how you put it away. They make different tips for these. It's very, very important that when you first get a solder joint, I got bigger tips that I use, that when you first get a solder gun, this tip is coated. Immediately when you turn it on and get heated up to temperature, around 550 to 600, put solder on it. Make sure you put solder on it because there's a special coat on it. If you notice in here, I got a thicker one right here. You notice how I put it away? It has a blob on it. And that's the way it should be stored. Trying to think of anything else that I'm missing. That's pretty much it. So thanks for watching. Comment if you can, if you had different experiences. Everybody's gun's a little bit different. Different tips. You might have some older solder, some different solder you like. I'd like to hear about it. So subscribe, comment, and all that good stuff. My next video will be on using how to use a solder sucker, which is the best one. And I've had every type. I've had the vacuum pumps, the solder machines, stations. I had them all, and they all have their purpose. And then I'll do another video after that, how to desolder stuff from boards and so forth, and how you can tell not to leave your gun on too long. And just talk about all the basics about soldering. But this should make it easier for you to solder next time. But the only thing I think I forgot was if you have to resolder something. Like if I had to redo this because I forgot to put heat shrink on, you have to retint them. So you got to tint both sides. Put your heat shrink on. If you get too much of a blob on here, just shake it off. And then just resolder. You always want to retint. Put fresh solder on. That is important. And look nice and shiny and brand new, just like your tip. So thanks for watching.